Sometimes I think it all started long before that night. Maybe it began the first time I took that road alone. Or maybe it was written somewhere deep in the silence of those Arkansas woods. My name's Ryan Tully. I've been a truck driver for more than 20 years. Long nights, endless miles, cheap coffee, and static-filled radio stations. That's most of my life. I used to think the road was the only place where I could breathe. But now, every time I see a mile marker, I remember her. It was late October, a little after 10 at night. I was hauling building supplies through Pope County, heading east toward Russellville. There's a stretch of highway there, barely used anymore, full of potholes and turns that seem to go nowhere. Locals call it the Hollow Route. I'd driven it a dozen times before, but that night felt different, heavier somehow. The sky was dark with no moon, just the occasional flicker of lightning far off in the distance. Around mile 43, I saw her. At first I thought it was a trick of the headlights, maybe fog or the reflection of a sign. But no, it was a woman. She stood on the shoulder of the road, soaking wet, holding a small red suitcase. She didn't wave or step back. She just stood there, staring right at me. My first thought was that maybe her car had broken down. Out here, that could be a death sentence if nobody stopped. I slowed down, rolled the window halfway, and asked if she was all right. Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear over the rain. She said she needed a ride to Hollow Creek Bridge, about 5 miles up. I told her to get in. She hesitated for a second, then walked around and opened the passenger door. The smell of wet earth and something metallic filled the cab. I can still remember how cold the air felt when she got in. She didn't talk much, just stared out the window, clutching that suitcase like it carried her whole life inside. I tried to make small talk, asked if she lived nearby, or if she wanted me to call someone, but she only shook her head. The closer we got to the bridge, the stranger the air felt. It wasn't just cold anymore, it was still, like the world had stopped breathing. When we reached the bridge, she asked me to pull over. There was no light, no sound except the rain hitting metal. She turned to me and said, "Thank you for stopping." Not everyone does. Then she stepped out, walked toward the railing, and disappeared into the dark. I waited there for a minute, headlights cutting through the mist, expecting to see her cross to the other side. But she didn't. It was like she'd melted into the rain. That was the last time I saw her alive. Or at least, that's what I thought. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept replaying the drive in my head. The woman's pale face, the sound of the rain, the way she vanished into the dark. I told myself I'd done the right thing by stopping, but deep down, something about it didn't sit right. By noon, I was back on the same route, heading west this time. The storm had passed, and the air was clear, but when I reached Hollow Creek Bridge, I noticed police tape fluttering in the wind. A couple of county patrol cars were parked near the railing, lights flashing. My chest tightened as I slowed down. 2 officers were leaning over the edge of the bridge, talking in low voices. I pulled over and stepped out. One of them, an older man with gray hair under his cap, turned toward me and asked if I needed something. I hesitated, then said, "I think I might have seen someone here last night." "A woman." He frowned, motioned for me to wait, and called over a younger deputy. After a minute, the younger one came up holding a clipboard and asked me to describe her. Dark hair, I said. White coat, red suitcase. Mid-30s, maybe. She said she needed to get to this bridge. The two men exchanged a look I didn't understand. Finally, the older officer sighed. "Son, we found a woman early this morning. She fits your description, except she's been dead for days." I remember laughing a little, thinking he was joking, but he didn't smile. He pointed toward the embankment below the bridge. Body washed up down there, tangled in the roots. Locals think she jumped sometime over the weekend. Been raining too hard to find her sooner. My mouth went dry. I tried to explain that I'd picked her up, that she'd been alive, talking, cold but breathing. But the words came out all tangled. The officer just stared at me, his face unreadable. "You should head home, son," he finally said. "The road plays tricks at night. Don't let it get in your head." I got back in my truck, hands shaking so bad I could barely start the engine. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Every tree seemed to lean closer to the road. Every shadow moved a little too much. I kept telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. Mistaken identity, bad timing, maybe I'd hallucinated from exhaustion. That night, I poured myself a drink and tried to forget. But when I went out to my truck the next morning, I found something that froze me where I stood. On the passenger seat, right where she'd been sitting, was a single white dahlia, wilted, soaked in mud, and reeking of river water. I hadn't put it there. I didn't touch the flower, just stood there staring at it, feeling my stomach twist. The seat was damp, like someone had been sitting there in the rain. I checked the doors, all locked from the inside. No footprints, no sign anyone had broken in. Just that flower, resting there like a reminder. That day I didn't drive. I stayed home, tried to focus on anything else. TV, paperwork, beer, nothing worked. Every time I blinked, I saw her face in the glare of the headlights. I even started wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'd seen a hitchhiker, dropped her off, and my mind had filled in the rest. But when night came, I couldn't shake the dread. The road outside my house looked darker than usual, like it was waiting for me. 2 nights later, I dreamed of her. She was standing at the edge of the bridge again, holding the red suitcase, water dripping from her hair. She didn't speak, just stared straight at me. Behind her, the river swelled and twisted like something alive. Then she raised her hand, pointed toward me, and whispered a single word I couldn't quite catch. I woke up, drenched in sweat, the sound of water still echoing in my ears. I told my wife, Claire, about it the next morning. She listened quietly, the way she always did when I got too deep into my own head. "It's probably stress," she said. "You've been working too many hours. Maybe it's your brain trying to process it." I wanted to believe her. But later that day, when I climbed into the truck, the flower was gone. Just a damp stain where it had been. Over the next few weeks, small things started happening. I'd hear tapping on the roof of the cab when I was parked. Tools shifted in the back even when the truck wasn't moving. Once, late at night, I caught a glimpse of something pale in my rearview mirror, like a face pressed against the back window. I turned around, heart pounding, but there was nothing there. I started taking different routes, avoiding mile 43 entirely, but even then I couldn't escape it. Sometimes I'd pass by a ditch or puddle and catch the faint smell of river water again. Sometimes I'd hear her voice, soft, grateful, whispering from the static on the radio. One evening after a long haul, I stopped at a diner outside of Conway. The waitress asked if I was all right. Said I looked pale, like I hadn't slept in days. When she handed me the bill, I noticed something written on the bottom in shaky handwriting. "See you at Hollow Creek." I looked up, but she was already gone. I didn't go to Hollow Creek right away. I told myself it was just a coincidence, maybe some prank from the waitress, maybe I'd misread it. But deep down, I knew that name. Hollow Creek was only a few miles from mile 43, a forgotten stretch of land that used to flood every spring before the river changed course. I'd driven past it 100 times without thinking, but now, just hearing the name made my chest tighten. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard water dripping, not from the sink or the rain. It was inside the walls, like the house itself was breathing, slow and wet. Claire said she couldn't hear it, but I saw how her hands trembled when she turned off the lights. I think she felt it too, even if she didn't want to admit it. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I grabbed my keys, drove out before sunrise, and followed the old road down toward Hollow Creek. The fog was thick, curling over the asphalt like smoke. My headlights caught glimpses of half-buried mailboxes, broken fences, and the skeletons of houses left to rot. The closer I got, the quieter it became. No birds, no wind, just the sound of my tires crunching gravel. When I reached the creek, I stopped the truck. The bridge was gone, just the rusted rails still jutting out from the dirt. Water moved sluggishly below, dark and heavy. And there, on the edge of the creek bed, I saw it. The red suitcase, half open, soaked through, its contents scattered in the mud. I got out, legs trembling, and stepped closer. Inside were photographs, water-stained, torn, of a young girl, maybe 6 or 7. Her face looked familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. There was also a hospital wristband, faded, but still legible. The name read, Emily Reeves. That's when I heard it. A voice behind me. "Why didn't you take me home?" I spun around, and she was there, standing barefoot in the mud, her dress clinging to her like it was part of her skin. Her hair was wet, tangled, dripping down her shoulders, but it was her eyes that froze me. Wide, pale, full of something that wasn't anger, but sorrow. I tried. I stammered. I didn't know where you lived. She shook her head slowly, water dripping from her fingertips. You left me there. The air turned cold. My breath came out in mist. Behind her, the river began to churn, ripples widening like something massive was stirring beneath the surface. I took a step back. "What do you want from me?" She smiled then, a small, broken thing to remember. And before I could move, she was gone. Just the sound of rushing water and the red suitcase sinking slowly into the mud. When I got back to the truck, the flour was on the dashboard again. Only this time it wasn't fresh. It was dry, blackened, and crumbled to dust when I touched it. I didn't tell anyone what happened at Hollow Creek. Not Claire, not the guys at the yard, not even the waitress at Conway's diner. Though I never saw her again anyway. I just went home, took a long shower, and tried to wash it off. But it didn't leave me. The smell of river water lingered in the house, on my clothes, even in my skin. It was like something had followed me back. Over the next week, things started to unravel. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find muddy footprints leading from the front door to the kitchen. Small ones like a child's. The taps would drip brown water that stained the sink. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of movement in the hallway mirror, a shadow behind my reflection, and always, just beneath it all, that soft sound. Water, trickling, flowing, whispering. Claire begged me to see someone, said I was losing sleep, losing weight, losing my mind. But how do you explain something like this? How do you tell the person you love that you might have brought something back from a place that shouldn't exist anymore? I told her I just needed time, that it was all in my head. But she knew I was lying. One night I went out to the truck again. I hadn't driven it since Hollow Creek, but I had to see it, had to know if the flower was really gone. When I opened the door, the smell hit me first. Damp, sweet, rotting. Then I saw her reflection in the rearview mirror. Not behind me, not outside, inside the glass. Her face half submerged, eyes open, hair floating like she was underwater. "Please," I whispered, "what do you want from me?" Her voice was faint, echoing like it came from deep below the river. "Tell them the truth." And that's when I remembered. The night it all started, I hadn't just seen her. I'd hit something, a shape darting across the road. I swerved, braked too late, and when I got out, there was nothing there. No body, no blood, just that red suitcase sitting in the ditch. I told myself it was debris, maybe trash thrown from another car. I drove away, convincing myself I'd imagined it all. But now I knew better. She wasn't asking for vengeance. She was asking to be seen, to be remembered for who she was, not buried under my guilt. I called the sheriff's office the next morning, told them everything. The road, the creek, the suitcase. They sent a team to dig near the old bridge. 2 days later they found her. A little girl's remains, identified by a hospital bracelet that had somehow survived the water and the years. The same one I'd seen in the mud. Emily Reeves, reported missing in 1997. Drowned after a car accident on that same stretch of highway. They said the driver never came forward. They said no one ever knew what happened. I didn't tell them that maybe, all this time, I did. And sometimes when it rains, I still hear her voice in the static. Soft, grateful, fading into the sound of the river. Thank you. Then nothing but water, always the water.